I never thought the hardest word I'd ever say would be to someone I loved more than life itself. But sometimes love means letting go, even when every fiber of your being wants to hold on tighter. My name is Barbara Mackenzie, though everyone calls me Barb. I'm 77 years old now, sitting here in my living room surrounded by photographs that tell the story of a life well lived, or so I thought. The walls are covered with smiling faces, birthdays, graduations, weddings. My late husband Frank and I built something we were proud of, not just the restaurant we ran for 30 years, but a family we cherished. These days, I spend a lot of time looking at these pictures, wondering where things went wrong, and more importantly, when they started to go right again. Let me take you back to where this story really begins, not to my childhood in small town Pennsylvania, or even to the early days when Frank and I were scraping together every penny to open Mackenzie's Family Diner in 1978. No, this story starts about 6 years ago when I was 71 and had everything a woman could want: health, financial security, and three beautiful grandchildren who called me the best grandma in the world. Jason was 20 at the time, already showing signs of the charm his grandfather had. Emma was 18, fresh out of high school with dreams as big as the sky. And Tyler, my baby, was just 16, full of energy and mischief. Their visits were the highlights of my weeks. They'd burst through my front door with hugs and laughter, filling this big old house with the kind of noise I'd missed since Frank passed away 3 years earlier. I was lonely, I'll admit that now. Frank and I had sold the diner in 2015, finally retiring after 3 decades of early mornings and late nights. We'd done well, better than well, actually. We'd saved wisely, invested carefully, and between the sale of the business and our retirement accounts, we had more money than we'd ever need. When Frank died in 2017, I inherited everything. Suddenly, I was a wealthy widow in a house too big for one person, with nothing but time and money on my hands. The kids knew I was comfortable. How could they not? I'd helped pay for Jason's college, contributed to Emma's art school tuition, bought Tyler his first laptop. I wanted to help. They were my grandchildren, my connection to the future, the living proof that Frank and I had created something lasting. It started small. Jason came over one Saturday afternoon in early 2019, and we were having coffee in this very room when he mentioned he'd found the perfect used car. "It's only $8,000, Grandma, but it would make such a difference for getting to work and school." His eyes were so hopeful, so much like his grandfather's used to be when he was excited about something. I wrote the check without hesitation. The joy on his face was worth every penny. 2 months later, Emma called. She'd been invited on a study abroad program to Europe, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to visit the great art museums of Paris, Rome, and Barcelona. "But Grandma, it's $12,000 with all the expenses, and I've only saved half. I'm going to miss out on this amazing chance." Her voice cracked with disappointment. How could I say no? I'd never been to Europe myself. The diner had kept us too busy, and by the time we retired, Frank's health was already declining. I wanted Emma to have the experiences I'd missed. I transferred the money that same day. Then Tyler needed help with his credit card debt from his freshman year of college. "I made some stupid mistakes, Grandma. I'm so ashamed, but if I don't pay off this $4,000, the interest is going to kill me." He actually cried when he told me. My heart broke for him. I paid it off. And so it went. Year after year, the requests kept coming. Jason needed money for a security deposit on a better apartment, $6,000. Emma wanted to take a specialized ceramics workshop in California, $5,000. Tyler's car broke down, $3,000 for repairs. Jason was starting a business venture with a friend, $15,000 investment. Emma needed new equipment for her art studio, $7,000. Tyler wanted to go on a graduation trip to Mexico, $4,500. I kept a ledger, not because I wanted to be repaid, but because Frank had taught me to always know where your money goes. Over 5 years, I gave my 3 grandchildren $120,000. That's more than Frank and I made in our first 5 years of running the diner combined. But something else was happening that I didn't write down in any ledger, something I didn't want to see. The visits changed. At first, I didn't notice the pattern. Jason would come by, we'd chat for maybe 30 minutes, and then, almost casually, he'd mention his latest financial need. Emma would call, we'd talk about her art for a few minutes, then the conversation would shift to some opportunity she couldn't afford. Tyler barely pretended anymore. He'd text me, "Hey, Grandma, can I come over? Need to talk to you about something important." I'd make their favorite foods. For Jason, it was my famous pot roast with all the fixings. For Emma, homemade lasagna and tiramisu. For Tyler, fried chicken and apple pie. I'd spend hours in the kitchen, just like the old days at the diner, preparing meals with love. They'd eat, compliment my cooking, ask for money, and leave. The time between visits grew longer. My birthday came and went. I turned 75 in June of 2022. I waited by the phone. Jason sent a text at 9 p.m. "Happy birthday, Grandma. Sorry so busy today, we'll call soon." Emma's message came 2 days later. "OMG, Grandma, I totally forgot. You know how scattered I am. Love you." Tyler didn't acknowledge it at all. I told myself they were young, busy with their lives. That's normal, right? I remembered being in my 20s, so caught up in my own world. Frank and I had been building the diner, working 16-hour days. We didn't visit my grandmother as often as we should have either, but we never asked her for money, and we always came for the holidays. Christmas 2022, I invited all 3 of them for dinner. Jason said he was going to his girlfriend's family. Emma was spending it with friends in New York. Tyler said he'd try to stop by, but never did. I sat alone with a Christmas ham I'd spent 2 days preparing, watching old movies and pretending I didn't care. My son Robert, their father, called that evening. "Mom, you doing okay? The kids said they couldn't make it." His voice was careful, diplomatic. He knew. Of course he knew. But he didn't say anything, and neither did I. We Mackenzies are good at avoiding difficult conversations. That's when the truth started seeping in, like water through a crack in a dam. But I pushed it away. I made excuses for them. They're building their careers, their lives. They're not obligated to spend time with me. I'm just the grandmother. And besides, I told myself, at least I can help them financially. That's something, isn't it? That's love, isn't it? The dam finally broke on Thanksgiving, 2023. I started preparing 3 days in advance. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, sweet potato pie, pumpkin pie, cranberry sauce from scratch, the whole traditional spread that Frank and I used to serve at the diner every Thanksgiving. I called each grandchild to confirm. Yes, they'd all be there. They promised. I set the table with my good china, the set Frank and I had received as a wedding gift 49 years earlier and only used for special occasions. I put out the fancy napkins, the crystal glasses, the silver candlesticks. I even bought fresh flowers for the centerpiece. The house smelled like heaven, roasted turkey and cinnamon, and all the scents of a family holiday. 3 o'clock came, the time we'd agreed on. No one arrived. 4 o'clock. I texted Jason. "On my way," he replied. 5 o'clock. I called Emma. It went to voicemail. 6 o'clock. The turkey was getting dry. I called Tyler. No answer. By 7 o'clock, I was sitting at that beautiful table, alone, staring at the cold food. That's when Jason finally texted, "So sorry, Grandma. Something came up with work. I'll make it up to you." Emma called around 7:30. "Grandma, I'm so sorry. I'm at this amazing Friendsgiving party, and I totally lost track of time. You understand, right?" Tyler never responded at all. I sat there until midnight. I didn't eat. I didn't clear the table. I just sat and looked at all that food, all that effort, all that love. And I let myself finally see what I'd been refusing to see for 5 years. They didn't love me. Or maybe they did, in some abstract way, but they didn't value me. I was a bank, not a grandmother, an ATM with a pulse, and I had let myself become that. I had bought their attention with money and convinced myself it was a relationship. I cried that night like I hadn't cried since Frank died, maybe harder, because when Frank died, people surrounded me with love and support. But this loss, the loss of the family I thought I had, I'd have to grieve alone. 2 weeks later, my phone rang. Tyler. My heart actually leaped. Maybe he was calling to apologize. Maybe he'd realized how badly they'd all treated me. Maybe, "Hey, Grandma, how are you?" His voice was cheerful, energetic. "I'm fine, Tyler. How are you?" "Oh, busy with stuff. Hey, so I'm calling because I'm in a bit of a situation. My landlord is threatening to evict me if I don't come up with $5,000 for back rent by Friday. I know it's a lot, but I'm totally desperate here. Can you help me out? I promise I'll pay you back this time." Something crystallized in that moment. $5,000. He wanted $5,000. He hadn't apologized for Thanksgiving. He hadn't asked about my health, my life, anything, just money. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking. No. Silence on the other end. Then, "What?" "No, Tyler. I'm not giving you the money." "Grandma, are you serious? I'm going to be homeless. You have so much money just sitting there. Why are you being like this?" His tone shifted from shock to anger so quickly it made my head spin. Here's what I wanted to say. I wanted to tell him about all the nights I spent awake worrying about him, about all the meals I'd cooked that went uneaten, about Thanksgiving and birthdays and Christmases spent alone. I wanted to tell him that I'd given him and his siblings $120,000 over 5 years and never asked for anything back except maybe a phone call now and then. I wanted to tell him that I was 77 years old and so desperately lonely that some days I considered getting back into my car and driving to the senior center just to have someone to talk to. But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said something simpler and harder. "I've helped you for 5 years, Tyler. Now it's time for you to help yourself." And I hung up. My hands were still shaking. My heart was pounding. I felt like I might throw up, but I also felt something I hadn't felt in years. Clarity. Within an hour, my phone exploded. Text messages from all 3 of them. Jason. "Seriously, Grandma? You're abandoning Tyler when he needs you most? After everything we've meant to each other?" Emma. "I can't believe you're being so selfish. Tyler is scared. How can you be so cold?" Tyler. "Wow. Just wow. I thought you loved us. Guess money means more to you than family." The messages got worse from there. They called me cruel, heartless, selfish. They said I was punishing Tyler for their mistakes. They said I'd changed, that I wasn't the grandmother they knew anymore. That last part was true, at least. I wasn't that grandmother anymore. That grandmother had been so afraid of being alone that she'd let herself be used. That grandmother had confused enabling with love. Then Robert called, my son, Tyler's father. "Mom, what's going on?" Tyler called me in tears. "He says you refused to help him with his rent." "That's correct." Mom, he's going to be evicted. Don't you care? I closed my eyes. Robert, let me ask you something. Did you know I spent Thanksgiving alone this year? Did Tyler mention that he never showed up, never called, never apologized? Silence. Did you know that in the past 5 years, I've given your children $120,000? Did you know they only call me when they need money? Did you know I haven't had a real conversation with any of them in over a year? More silence. Mom, I didn't know it was that bad. It is that bad. And I let it happen. I taught them that Grandma is a solution to every problem, a blank check for every want. I never taught them to be grateful, to be independent, to be responsible. That's on me, Robert. But I'm fixing it now. By letting Tyler become homeless? Tyler is 22 years old. He has a college degree. He has 2 parents. He has options. What he doesn't have is the ability to face consequences, because I've always protected him from them. All of them. Well, not anymore. We argued for another 20 minutes. Robert said I was being harsh, punishing them for being young and foolish. I said I was being honest, finally, and that honesty sometimes feels harsh when you're used to sugarcoating everything. The next day, Robert's wife, Michelle, called. The conversation was worse. She accused me of trying to control the children by withholding money. She said I was manipulating them, that I'd spoiled them, and now I was angry that they'd taken what I offered. You're right about one thing, I told her. I did spoil them. And that was wrong. I'm not angry, Michelle. I'm heartbroken. But being heartbroken doesn't mean I have to keep making the same mistake. She hung up on me. For a week, the messages continued. Then they stopped. No one called. No one texted. It was like I'd ceased to exist. I'd be lying if I said it didn't hurt. It did, terribly. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and reach for my phone, wanting to call Tyler and tell him I'd changed my mind, that I'd send the money. I'd walk past the photographs on my walls and remember the sweet little kids they'd been, and I'd wonder if I was making a terrible mistake. But then I'd remember Thanksgiving. I'd remember the pattern of 5 years. And I'd remember something Frank used to say when we were starting the diner and things got tough. Sometimes you have to let the pot boil over before you realize you need to turn down the heat. I made a decision. I called my financial advisor and my lawyer. I set up a trust that would ensure I had enough money for the rest of my life, including potential medical care and assisted living if I needed it. Everything else, my remaining savings, the value of my house, I designated for charity. I chose a local organization that helps children from low-income families access education and opportunities. I didn't tell my family immediately. I wanted to see what would happen. I wanted to know if any of them would reach out for a reason other than money. 3 months passed, nothing. 4 months. Silence. 5 months. It was April 2024, and I had my annual checkup with Dr. Patterson. She asked how I was doing, and I broke down in her office. I told her everything. She listened, didn't judge, and then she said something I'll never forget. Barbara, you're grieving. You're grieving the relationship you thought you had with your grandchildren. That's real grief, and it's okay to feel it. But don't let that grief convince you to go back to a situation that was hurting you. 6 months after I said no to Tyler, Emma called. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her name on my phone. I answered, trying to keep my voice steady. Hi, Grandma. Her voice was small, tentative. Hi, Emma. I wanted to talk to you. Can I come over? Of course. She came the next day. I made lasagna, even though I told myself not to, even though I knew I might be setting myself up for disappointment again. But old habits die hard, and cooking had always been my way of showing love. Emma sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd had so many meals together. She was thin thinner than I remembered. She had dark circles under her eyes. She looked older than 24. Grandma, I need to say something, and I need you to let me finish before you respond, okay? I nodded. I've been thinking about everything that happened, about Tyler and the rent money, about Thanksgiving, about everything. And I talked to my therapist. Yes, I'm seeing a therapist now, and she helped me see things I didn't want to see. She took a breath. I used you. We all used you. We treated you like a bank, and we told ourselves it was okay because you offered, because you seemed happy to help, because you never said no. But the truth is, we stopped seeing you as a person. You were just grandma with money, grandma who fixes problems. And when you finally set a boundary, we punished you for it. We called you selfish for not continuing to enable us. Tears were streaming down her face now. I was so angry at you. For months, I was furious. I thought you'd betrayed us, abandoned us. But then I started really thinking about it. When was the last time I asked about your life? When was the last time I called just to talk? When was the last time I did something for you instead of asking you to do something for me? She covered her face with her hands. I couldn't remember, Grandma. I couldn't remember a single time. And that's when I realized what we'd done to you, what I'd done to you. I wanted to speak, but she held up her hand. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I don't deserve your love, but I'm here to tell you that I'm sorry. I'm so, so sorry. And I understand if you never want to see me again. I understand if you've written me out of your life, because God knows I wrote you out of mine, except when I needed something. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I reached across the table and took her hand. Emma, I forgave you months ago. I forgave all of you. That was never the question. The question was whether I loved you enough to keep enabling you, or whether I loved you enough to let you grow up. I'm trying, she said. I got a full-time job. It's just retail, and it doesn't pay much, but it's mine. I'm paying my own bills now. I'm learning to budget. I'm learning to be an adult, I guess. I'm proud of you. I don't know if Jason and Tyler will ever understand. Tyler is still angry. He ended up moving back in with Mom and Dad, which he hates. Jason thinks you owe him an apology. He says you led him to believe you'd always help, and then you pulled the rug out. I smiled sadly. Maybe I did, in a way. I never taught you that my help had limits. I never taught you to be grateful. That was my failing. No, Emma said firmly. That was our failing. We're adults. We should have known better. We talked for 3 hours that day, really talked like we hadn't in years. She told me about her struggles with anxiety, about a bad relationship she'd been in, about her fears and hopes. I told her about my loneliness after Frank died, about my struggles with aging, about my own fears and regrets. When she left, she hugged me tight and said, "Can I come back next week? Just to visit? No agenda?" I'd love that. She's been coming every week since then. Sometimes she brings takeout and we eat together. Sometimes we just sit and talk. Sometimes we don't talk much at all. We watch old movies, or she helps me with things around the house. It's not about money anymore. It's about relationship. Jason and Tyler haven't reached out. Robert and Michelle are civil now, but there's a distance that wasn't there before. They know about my decision to leave my estate to charity. Robert said it was my choice to make, but I could hear the disappointment in his voice. Michelle hasn't spoken to me directly since our last phone call. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice. Sometimes I think about all the ways I could have handled it differently, more gently. Sometimes I wake up at night and feel the weight of estrangement from most of my family. But then I remember Thanksgiving 2023. I remember the cold turkey and the empty chairs and the profound loneliness of being surrounded by evidence of love that didn't exist. And I remember that what I had before wasn't real. It was a transaction dressed up as relationship. I'm 77 years old now. I've lived through a lot. Growing up poor in Pennsylvania, working my way through the early years of marriage, building a business from nothing, losing the love of my life. But nothing prepared me for having to say no to my own grandchildren. You know what I've learned? Real love isn't just about giving. It's not about providing for every need and want. Real love is about wanting the best for someone, even when that means letting them struggle, even when it means they might hate you for a while, even when it means you sit alone at Thanksgiving. I spent 50 years feeding people, first at my mother's table, then at the diner, then in this kitchen for my family. I thought feeding people was how you showed love. And it is sometimes, but it's not the only way, and it's not always the right way. The hardest thing I ever did was teach my grandchildren that I wasn't a bottomless well of resources, that I was a person with limits, with needs, with the right to say no. I spent 76 years learning to be generous. It took me until 77 to learn that sometimes the most generous thing you can do is stop giving. Emma understands now. Maybe someday Jason and Tyler will too. Maybe they won't. I can't control that. All I can control is whether I'm going to keep sacrificing my dignity and well-being for the illusion of family harmony. I look at the photographs on my walls now, and they tell a different story than they used to. I see the little kids Jason, Emma, and Tyler were. I see Frank's smile. I see Robert as a young man. But I also see the spaces between the photos, the years of gradual distance, the slow replacement of relationship with transaction. And I see new photos too. One of Emma and me from last month, taken in my garden. We're both laughing, genuinely laughing, in a way I can't remember doing with her in years. That photo is worth more to me than the $120,000 I gave away, because that photo represents something real. I still cook. I still make too much food, old habits being what they are. But now when I cook, it's for the senior center volunteers, or for my neighbor who just had surgery, or for Emma when she visits. I cook with love, but not with desperation. I feed people, but I don't feed dysfunction. Next month is Thanksgiving again. Emma asked if she could come. She asked, not assumed. She offered to bring something, to help cook, to do dishes. We're going to have a small dinner, just the two of us, and it will be more of a family celebration than the elaborate production I put on last year for people who never came. If you're reading this, if you're in a similar situation, whether with grandchildren, children, friends, anyone, please hear me when I say this. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Love does not mean accepting abuse or disrespect. Generosity does not mean allowing yourself to be used. It took me 77 years to learn how to say no. That small word, just 2 letters, might be the most loving thing I've ever said to my grandchildren. Because real love doesn't just prop people up. Real love teaches people to stand on their own 2 feet, even when the lesson is hard, even when they hate you for it, even when you doubt yourself in the dark hours of the morning. I gave my grandchildren $120,000 over 5 years, but the word no I finally gave Tyler, that might be the most valuable gift I ever gave any of them. Time will tell if they ever understand that. Time will tell if they ever come to see that the grandmother who said no loved them more than the grandmother who always said yes. I'm not perfect. I made mistakes in how I raised Robert, in how I spoiled my grandchildren, in how I let things go on too long, but I'm learning, even at 77, that it's never too late to change, never too late to set boundaries, never too late to choose yourself. Frank would be proud of me, I think. He always said I was too soft, too willing to put everyone else first. "Barb," he'd say, "you can't pour from an empty cup." I didn't understand what he meant then. I do now. My cup isn't empty anymore. It's not full either. I'm still healing, still learning, still grieving what I lost and celebrating what I've found, but there's enough in it for me. And when Emma visits, there's enough to share with her too. Real sharing, real relationship, real love. That's worth more than all the money in the world.